Hi everybody, this is Sheila Aliens and today is December 11th, 2011. I don't know what to make of this, but there have been a series of mystery booms heard around the country on the East Coast just this month in December so far. This was posted December 3rd, Jackson County, Mississippi. Mysterious rumbling. And Livingston, Louisiana. A loud boom. Horry County, South Carolina. Strange lights in the sky and a boom. Louisville, Kentucky. Booms heard across Kentuckiana. New Jersey. Floors shook, bottles rattled, bells jingled, and scores of New Jersey residents up and down the state cried earthquake yesterday morning. Despite more than 60 residents who claimed to have felt shaking yesterday morning, a spokesman for USGS said none of the seismometers stationed around the state picked up even a hint of trembling. So 3 of these have been supposedly explained away. That would be the one in Louisville and the ones in Louisiana and Mississippi. In Mississippi, Keesler Air Force Base says that they are conducting a drill that may involve some flying. However, none of the aircraft are capable of causing a sonic boom. Possibly it had something to do with those drills that they were doing on the same weekend from that military base. Who knows? Second one that's been explained away was the one in Louisiana right next door. The Baton Rouge Metro Airport said the sound was possibly made by a low-flying beach jet.
Those of you living in Livingston Parish may have heard a loud boom just before 10:30 this morning. Some even claim they actually felt the boom. The Baton Rouge Airport reports that a beach jet was flying over the area at that time and was flying low enough that could have caused a sonic boom there.
Whatever. And then another one that's been explained away was Louisville, Kentucky.
Coursey. Loud booms and vibrations were heard and felt across the area from southern Indiana to metro Louisville and points to the south.
We were flooded with Facebook posts, and now we know what caused those booms. WDRB's Valerie Chin is here to explain. A mystery for a while.
Yes, it was a training exercise at Fort Knox that just ended, but people may still hear demolition training through the end of the week.
That is, of course, up to you whether or not you want to believe any of these excuses. Some of them might be true. And if you have any more questions about them, I suggest doing a little bit of research to find out more about each one. Somebody left a comment on a video I posted from the Carolinas about mystery lights in the skies and a boom that was heard at the same time. And their comment said to check out the Belle Island Booms, which is an old documentary about these kind of mysterious booms happening. And I just found some really eerie similarities in the pattern of New Jersey and then South Carolina, and it happened in December as well. This was back in 1978, and it's still happening. Let's take a look.
Belle Island boom. CBC newsman Rick Seaward brings us the story of the unusual atmospheric explosion which occurred last April. The story doesn't begin in Newfoundland, but in the United States.
They called them the MysteryBooms. They began the same day, December 2nd, 1977, 1,000 kilometers apart. 9:30 in the morning at Charleston, South Carolina. Half an hour later in New Jersey, and again that afternoon at 3:45. There were more throughout the month of December, shaking homes and terrifying people.
By the end of the year, there was a tremendous amount of pressure on President Carter to have the cause of the booms investigated. So the Office of Science and Technology in the White House asked the Defense Department to look into it.
On March 3rd, they stopped. On March 3rd, the Navy report was released in Washington. The booms were blamed on supersonic planes bouncing sonic booms off the upper atmosphere. They had stopped off the United States, but not in Canada, where the Transport Department is concerned.
Well, it confuses me. If, in fact,
Neil Stanton has had problems explaining where the booms off Nova Scotia are coming from. Most appear to be supersonic, but in many cases, there were no supersonic planes around at the time. 11 o'clock on a hazy Sunday morning in April.
Yeah, well, it was a terrific explosion so sudden that it was just like a blockbuster. It dropped like they dropped them in the parachutes there in London, you know, and the parachutes was a terrific explosion and shook the house, The
boom was heard 65 kilometers away.
Somebody had started their fireworks again. I was standing right here by the table and the fire came out of this, I guess with electricity you call it. The fire came out, I suppose, about 18 inches out across the table here. Straight a blue fire, Blue flame. Lights came on, fire came out to the socket here and then bang out that boom,
All over the tiny settlement of Lance Cove and Bell Island, people reported things like that. Television sets all of a sudden appeared to explode and began smoking. Electric motors burned out. Little balls of fire came out through the glass and oven doors. Even an old clock that hadn't worked in years, wasn't even wound up, suddenly went mad.
Most frightening of all were the fireballs.
Well, first when I saw it, myself, I thought there was something happened to the world, or someone dropping bombs or something. Well, it was about 3 feet in diameter, and it was a circle, and it was mostly blue, but it had a little bit of orange on the edge of it, which sort of like sparks, little tiny sparks coming from it.
3 buildings were hit by something, in one end and out the other. This was a TV set. A barn oddly blown apart, no burns. Dead chickens bleeding from the eyes and mouth, no burns. Nearby in the snow, 3 depressions, one like a rabbit hole, the others about 4 feet across. Just before the boom, some people heard a sharp noise like a tone, while across the bay, people saw a strange beam of light strike the island.
It was like a white streak, you know, from the sky toward the land, slanting towards the land.
Scientists later guessed enough electrical energy had been spent here in a fraction of a second to supply the city of Montreal for up to 6 hours. They came from as far away as New Mexico and New York to investigate. Their conclusion? Super lightning.
Oh, it was a very, very strange phenomenon, all right, but so far as I can make out, there's no hint of anything other than an electrical phenomenon. It was a discharge. It was a lightning of kind. A very unusual one, and an enormous one by comparison with other lightning effects.
The balls of fire, reported miles apart, ball lightning. The description of the flash in the sky, unreliable. Super lightning is a new term used to describe unusually intense lightning, 1,000 times more powerful than the ordinary kind. It's been recorded lately by military satellites for the past couple of years, in fact. The flashes were said to be unusual over land. Many people on Bell Island refused to believe it was lightning.
No way, that was lightning.
What do you think it was?
Explosion?
It sounded like an explosion.
Yes, explosion definitely was an explosion. I thought the whole house was gone in two. I thought it was the end of the world, so help me. Really did. That was the end of the world.
When you keep Bell Island in mind and go back over the accounts of the other booms along the Atlantic seaboard, many of them sound a lot like that.
For some reason, many of the reports of booms involving lights have originated here in New Jersey. And one of the most memorable of such reports was last December in this community of Toms River.
The military insists Toms River experienced an electrical transformer, something many residents accept. But others, those who directly experienced the event, aren't so sure. Professional weatherman George Propoulos watched an odd flashing in the sky.
What it was it was very brilliant. It was brighter than normal lightning. In other words, for it to be this brilliant and this bright, which was almost white at times when it lit up, it would have to be associated with a very strong thunderstorm, which would have very heavy rains and very powerful thunder associated with it. And incidentally, around the entire county that night, there was no rainfall or any thunderstorm activity reported.
Across the bay from where George Propoulos lives, Bob Levy didn't see any flashing, but round about the same time, he began feeling strange and later experienced something he'll never forget.
The smoke detector went off, just for a brief instant. It was followed by what I call an explosion, the intensity level of which was tremendous. I don't know any other way to put it. I mean, it was a boom. I bolted upright in bed, looked down the hall through the bedroom door in the direction that the sound had come from, and as I did, at a distance of about 20 feet, I have these sliding glass doors that lead out to a back terrace, and rather heavy drapes covering the doors. Through the drapes, I saw a perfectly symmetrical ball of light. I don't know if that's what it was, but that's how I describe it. Just for the briefest instant.
And there are more than that. When you go down the list of them, it's clear that many of the so-called booms are actually more than sonic booms. They often involve these balls of fire, flashes of light, electrical activity in the atmosphere. It almost seems as if there are classes of booms. This man is probably the world's most respected climatologist and geophysicist. He's just finished a 7-month study of the booms and concluded there are different types with different causes. Dr. McDonald thinks many of the booms could be forerunners of an earthquake. The Bell Island boom, he says, resulted from a high-level thunderstorm that people on the ground weren't aware of.
And in that violent thunderstorm, there was a gigantic bolt of lightning, I suspect one of the largest ever recorded in history, that came down and gave rise to the very intense noise and to the electrical activity that was clearly observed at the ground.
Dr. McDonald rejects outright any possibility of military involvement other than supersonic aircraft, but other scientists aren't so sure.
It crosses everybody's mind. It's not unrealistic to think that either American, Canadian, or Soviet weapons testing could be in back of some of the obscure phenomena that are known to take place. Occasionally, it is known that one side or the other has tested weapons, which is then objected to by the other side. These are all within the realm of reasonable speculation.
Just how serious is the concern about the military? Well, scientists who are aware of some of the research underway could be excused for wondering. Some of the things that we came across in our hunt for an explanation for the booms sounded like something right out of a science fiction movie, but it's no fiction. The ideas we're about to discuss and the scientific work we refer to are genuine. The fact that reputable scientists even remotely think that such things could be related to events like the booms is in itself a disturbing comment on our times.
The triggering of a particular kind of electrical waves in the atmosphere that can affect human behavior. As perhaps you know, the brain has electrical activity and that has a particular frequency, that is, it changes regularly about 10 times a second, and if one could change the natural electrical activity, one can change behavior in that way. My own assessment, and it's a fairly detailed and technical assessment, is that this is presently impossible, that one doesn't have the technology or is likely to develop that kind of technology to achieve that kind of control anytime in the near future.
In the same paper, Dr. McDonald warned of research into ways to use nature as a weapon of war. The military have always been interested in the weather. An official of a naval research facility once boasted, "We would regard the weather as a weapon, and weather is as good a one as any." The Navy was instrumental in developing techniques used to alter weather during the Vietnam War. They denied it at first, but it was going on. Operation Popeye, Operation Intermediary, Operation Compatriot, different names for the same thing, a weather war in Southeast Asia. Clouds were seeded over North Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. There was flooding, and thousands died. The Americans made it rain acid and grease. Dr. McDonald is well known as an outspoken critic of the military uses of weather, and he's largely responsible for this: a treaty outlawing environmental weather modification for military purposes. He now says the military are not as interested in weather modification as they used to be. But when it was more fashionable back in 1974, a scientist in Nevada wrote a paper on a way to create artificial lightning using something he called a pulsating electron beam. After the article was published, he was approached by the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Air Force, and the Russians, who liked the idea and thought it could be applied to weapons research. He doesn't know if they ever did develop his idea further. Would the 4 years or so that have elapsed since have been enough time for someone to perfect your device if they had continued working on it?
I heard only that one colleague of mine from Cornell University, he told me once, that was a few years ago, that he wanted to make an experiment to test that idea for beam propagation.
You're saying that they indicated to you that they suspected this event was going to happen a week beforehand?
They suspected that they had come to the conclusion that something like this was due to happen. As far as I can make out, that's what they said. So I asked one of them afterwards, I kind of said, well, how did you know about it? How did you know it happened? How did it come up so quickly? Because it wasn't broadcast all over the place. And I said, did you notice it on the satellite images? And they said, yeah, they picked it up. I think it was on 2, he said, on 2 photographs. They picked up this explosion. And they were really surprised when they got here that there was so little damage. They'd actually thought with the force of what they apparently picked up on the satellites, they thought the place would have been flattened.
The 2 men from Los Alamos, John Warren, a plasma physicist, Robert Fryman, a weapons design engineer. His specific job we couldn't find out. He describes himself as a theoretician. Fryman wouldn't give us an interview, but here's his side of the story. At Los Alamos, they're working on thermonuclear energy confinement, the process that's thought to cause lightning to form into a ball. If they can store energy, it can be harnessed. He admitted saying he expected the boom was going to happen, explaining that he'd had a hunch about the weather. He said there had been several similar events over New Jersey and South Carolina. Super lightning that had been occurring over the ocean for some reason had moved over land, and he thought there might be a connection. When it happened over Bell in Washington, asked him to check it out. He wouldn't say who. The visit was unusual in another way. It wasn't arranged through channels. Through the American Embassy and the External Affairs Department in Ottawa, the route government scientists are supposed to follow. The visit of the Los Alamos scientists added another dimension to the Belle Island boom, a dimension that to many is a cause to think, to others, a cause to forget.
Yeah, I think maybe the reason for that was that we realized that perhaps there was something a little deeper in it than we cared to think at the time. And both Ken Collis and myself kind of decided upon ourselves that maybe we keep out of it and let the powers that be, whoever they might be, sort of
Now, is that some badass vintage conspiracy theory or what? This was an awesome report. They don't make them like this anymore. That was really very cool. To summarize, I guess the mystery has not been solved. It's still happening, although I have not heard of anybody having property damage from it anymore. But what do we know? And it is happening again in December, just like it did back in 1977, I think it was. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. It's still happening on the East Coast. I wonder what the hell it could be. Thanks for watching. Yeah.